So when you came on the AMO podcast back in 2022, the whole thesis was, quote, creator first B2B media, solving what you called the knowledge expert paradox. Take us back to the origin and the core thesis, and then walk me through how the thinking has evolved to where Workweek sits in 2026.
Yeah, I've rebranded knowledge expert to experience paradox. It's a little easier to say, but concept is exact same, that the most underutilized and under-resourced and overlooked type of creator are folks with real-world experience doing that job every day, earning that, and then creating content around it. And the loudest people on the internet tend to be the ones with the least amount of experience, and the quietest people on the internet tend to be the ones with the most amount of experience. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that is still at the heart of everything that we're trying to do and trying to solve, is how do we make that more comfortable, more successful to attract more of those types of creators.
I think I saw somewhere that you kind of described it as the stories that you guys tell, the writing you do, the content you create is sort of like lessons you can't Google. Is that like a fair way of describing what you do?
Yeah. Well, and part of that though is also the personality, right? Like it's like I can go find the news, I can go do something, but what I can't Google is like, well, what does Jacob think about that? Right. And that's, so sometimes it's actually perspective and, you know, unique insights that you can't Google, but it's all about that experience. Like you can't Google that. And it's why people still meet for coffee meetings. And I don't think that's going away.
So we wrote, I think, the announcement about you guys raising your Series A back in 2024. Mm-hmm. It was right around this time 2 years ago. And that was when you announced the communities part of the business. You made it very clear that this wasn't a pivot, that this was just a natural evolution of the business, that you had written an 18-page memo when you first started the business. This was always where you were going to go. Can you talk about, like, trace that line for us from creators and creator newsletters and like it's almost like siloed creator businesses to these communities?
So always where we're going to go is maybe a broad stroke that's somewhat inaccurate. I think there's a lot of belief that getting more of these types of creators would create a ton of trust and value. And our goal was to understand the best way to actually then capture that value for the creator, for ourselves, and for anyone else involved. Always was the goal. And because ultimately that's how you win. And the communities, what I think was probably misunderstood, and I probably didn't do a good enough job of explaining at the time, was this wasn't about a product for monetization. It was and the reason why I call it an evolution, it was the opportunity to allow more people to create content. And today, you know, when we think about giving people the opportunity to start to share those insights, there's a lot of things that hold people back. One of them is I call it like the trust and the risk reward of creating content. Like I could go write a bunch of things on Sunday, I publish it. Monday, I have a team meeting. If I get one person raise my hand of like, hey, I saw you wrote that yesterday. Like, I don't want to deal with that. Oh, my boss doesn't like what I wrote. I'm fired. That's like, there's risks of those things, and the rewards seem very small. And so the community was this kind of our first wave of creating a space where people could start to connect and lower that risk, where like it was peer-to-peer. And that was the first attempt at that, and with the goal ultimately of allowing more people to create content. It wasn't necessarily around revenue and, hey, we have this new thing to make. Those things are great and it's going to happen, but really the community is about lowering the risk of that we know a lot of people face when creating content in positions of authority, and giving them an opportunity to start to feel more comfortable to do that.
I know one of your favorite companies is Disney, and I think you
know me too well.
Far too well. And you have on many occasions tweeted out this graphic that kind of lays out the map of Disney, how, you know, you've got the Disney IP and how they monetize that IP in all these different ways, and how they bring this together and how it all feeds back into more IP and all that. So like you've got this very clear like mind of Disney is the North Star of how we kind of build a business. What does that look like for Workweek?
You know, and I've had a lot of learning about myself and the business, I think, the last 4 years. I love Walt Disney, the risk that he took, the innovation that he had, the attention to detail, the way he brought his brother along, the way he wasn't believed and hid his, I mean, there's so many parts of his story. And of course, like the IP itself of how wonderful and like the legacy of that. At first I probably was too naive of believing that the best way to build was to follow the path of those different revenue sources. And so, they had music and they then could license that. They had merchandise, they had movies and theaters, etc. And all those things compounded on top of each other. And that is why it's still around today after all these years. And I think what we've learned over time is like that idea of putting something forward that helps the next thing be better is the right attitude. And Disney did that incredibly well. What I've come to believe, and this was a lot of the changes we made in 2022-3 time period, was having different business models and different revenue lines is so hard. Like it makes you respect Bezos and everyone that's done it. It's just incredibly difficult. And that's an operational problem. But what I kind of had dawned on me with Disney is that all those things made each one better. They weren't extractive. They made the next thing more efficient. Like they saved music rights on budget that wasn't for profit. It was so they could then innovate more on the set. And they used that margin to then make the movies better. And like that, they all actually added up. And I think it was easy early days when I was using that and tweeted that out a lot and honestly told good stories that people believed, including myself, is like, hey, if we do this really well, we could then have a hiring service, or we could then do this. And it's totally true. Like it would make one thing better, but it was too extracted too much, and it didn't make the next thing better. I think that's what we've learned. I'm still very much inspired by that map. I have a printed out version of that in our office. I look at it all the time, but it's really understanding that like it's about compounding what you've done and how it makes the next thing better versus, hey, this next thing would be easier to do. And that's like a shift I think I've learned over time of like understanding the real purpose of that map wasn't about creating 20 different businesses. It was making every business better.
So using that example of recruiting, you got, is basically what you're saying, that you found that really all you were doing was just generating revenue off of this thing rather than it like driving something back in.
And it drove a lot of revenue, like quickly. Yeah. Like, I mean, it was amazing. It was, our revenue growth in year 2 was awesome. And it was like, wow, this is working. And then, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was being a new dad and staying up all night, but I started having like a lot of like conversations. Like one of the things we got Workweek started on was like, how do we think about incentives first? It's like why we created this creator. No one still has really figured out how to do the type of creators we're working with successfully and how to think about that. And I think the incentives that we've thought about from day one about that relationship is what's made it work. And what I started realizing over time is like that matters even more as you get bigger and the types of products you offer. And a hiring service is great, but like what incentive does that make you have on a first principle level for a business? And it wasn't one that we inherently got better every year as a business. We might have more revenue, but that does not necessarily mean it's a better business. And so those were the kind of like process and the things that made us kind of go back to our core competency of like, let's just go focus on advertising. Let's make the best damn advertising possible, because we believe the incentives of great advertising are the most aligned to great content and great pay and all these other things. And so that was like that evolution the last couple of years.
So when you think about Disney and when you think about Workweek, what compounds for Workweek over the long run? What's the durable asset that the company itself owns besides like the individual creator brands that you might not actually own specifically?
Right.
Like 10 years from now, how has Workweek compounded?
So there's like a tangible and an intangible asset, but I actually think to make both work, and Disney did this. Like Disney became known to be an entertainment company. Mm-hmm. They were known of like, if you saw something from Disney, you were going to be entertained. And then on the flip side of that, they had IP that compounded. For us, that IP is very much around data. And we've realized that over time that the data that we have the way that we're able to update that data, keep it fresh, is very unique to us. And pull
that thread. What do you mean by the data that you have? Why is it unique?
So when first off, and I know most of your audience has newsletters, but like if we take a step back, email addresses are the greatest thing for data that exists. It is identity. It is a way to keep identity, are they active? Is there engagement? And then there's also distribution attached to it. We focus way too much on distribution for email than the identity side of that. And so when we start to look at the reach within our networks that we have of these relatively niche spaces like healthcare and hospital systems, we have a huge amount of scale within that niche. And having the identity of that group is relatively unique. There's other companies that attempt to have that. The second part of that is kind of goes to the Disney map of like a year and a half ago, our board was like, why do you build last May or so, we announced that we quietly that we built our own event registration platform. So like instead of using Luma and others, we built our own. And it was like, why did we do that? And it's like, there's nothing that we do more active than events. Our members throw their own events. We throw events all the time, webinar, etc. This is like an opportunity to keep data fresh. Like when someone comes back and they signed up 2 years ago, they come again, we now know they have a new job. They now have a new company. And so that activity, most publishers, I think generally where we kind of separated our strategy is like they ask for information one time, never really ever get it again. And we've been continuously thinking about how can we actually find things that compound that data as the IP. And over time, there will be lots of opportunities to monetize and make money. And I think that's the key part of that is like revenue sources is not necessarily the thing that in 10 years you're like, we have more money than everyone else. Like, no, I think in the long run, it's the density that we have within that group and the freshness of the data. And then the intangible side is I think we are becoming, and I believe we are known for being at the forefront of having the best content from practitioners. Where if you think about HR and the person there, if you think about, we are like we are the group known for that. That is the intangible reputation that we think in 10 years we can be the leader on as well.
So what are the verticals that you operate in?
E-commerce, marketing, healthcare, hospital and health systems, HR, and fintech, but really it's banking with like a technology lens. So
when we talked in 2024, across the portfolio, you had just crossed 500,000 subscribers. And then by the end, we did a story in you guys last year. I think you talked to Christiana about it. You were projecting 55 to 70,000 verified community members by the end of 2025.
Yeah, we blew that out of the water.
So where are you from a verified members perspective?
200 plus thousand, 250 probably at this point.
So I think the big shift that kind of occurred with your communities business is when you and I talked, communities were a paid product.
Correct.
I don't know if they still are a paid product.
We have a premium offering for 3 of them, but It's not really anything that we push.
So talk about why go paid and then shift to free? Was this like talk about that thinking?
Yeah. So the thinking was to the point of like we were always doing this is we launched a community in 2022 or early in the company and it was paid. And this was when we were like trying to discover how do we take advantage of the trust that we've built. And it was by far the easiest thing. It was pulling us. It was like, hey, look at these people buying this. We're like not even really marketing it that much and everyone's doing it. And it was in the Slack community at the time and people were like always active and talking. And I was like, wow, this feels like the best thing we have going on for us. So when we launched, it was a continuation of that.
Yeah.
So that's why we did it. In September, we switched to free. So we launched it, we announced it with you in June. By September, we had basically completely, we really started pulling back any paywall of sorts and started using identity as the as the way to pay in versus a credit card. And that's definitely where the momentum started coming from once we made that switch, which, when we think about the comparison I made at the time was Doximity. It was free. Writing was on the wall that we were probably going to move there, but it was a continuation of just what was already existing.
It's hard to make paid work at scale.
I don't believe it. I mean, we've raised venture. It's not a secret. I don't believe you can really create venture-like outcomes without having some sort of B2B enterprise play on subscription. Mm-hmm. It's just too hard doing content or community on a subscription basis. I'm not saying it's not a great business. There's a lot of people that do it really, really well for the expectations that we have. I just don't think it's the business that made the most sense.
So we'll keep digging into communities in a little bit, but at the center of everything is the creator, right? I mean, if we take the IP of the data, put that aside, the creator, at least for now, is the center of.
Well, it's the core belief of the business, right? Like, I don't believe there's a time and space for journalists. Like Industry Dive has amazing journalists. We're absolutely believe that that's a good thing for the world. So just it's not a negative aspect of there. What we see as the opportunity is that there are like everyone talks about Lenny Rachesky, and he's incredible, and so is other people that have created content really successfully from doing the job. My view of that is that great leaders in companies are typically great creators. They write internal memos, they host events, they are on stage, they do weekly all hands. They are creating content all the time. But like all of a sudden, if you turn the camera the other way and you're like, oh, this isn't your company, but it's someone else. Our third pillar of why people don't do this is insecurity. Risk reward is a big part of it, but the third one is insecurity. They get like, I don't know. And that's what we think. If we can solve that, it creates this huge, that the opportunity is massive. And it creates more relatable and relevant content. And so that's why the creator's at the forefront, is that type of creator. To this day, we haven't even like scratched the surface. If it's like 0.1% of what we could do.
So one of the criticisms I've heard about the whole practitioner creator model, and to be clear, that's what AMO is, right? Like the first 4 years of AMO was just me, and I was also at Morning Brew running, the B2B business there. So I was an example of a practitioner creator. But the biggest criticism I've heard about this type of business is that the second somebody becomes a creator, like their practitioner life starts to recede, right? Like if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars as a creator, you might no longer want to be the practitioner. And so your practitioner experience starts to fade. And so an expert today, 3 years from now, is not an expert. How do you combat that?
Yeah, I highly, highly encourage people to stay in their job. And the way you do that is you have them make less things. Like the reason why you quit is to go make more things to make more money, because that's like how media works. I like to kind of like reframe it. In my free time in the fall, I officiate high school football. And I've done it at the varsity level for like 10 years. But like I call it my avocation. It's not a hobby because it takes way more time than that. I also get paid a little bit of money. But like I also know, could I like really try? Even if I get into D1 college football as a referee, I keep my full-time job. And I use that when I talk to creators, like what makes this great is what you're doing. So don't quit. But the other part of it that people actually like, when you like break down, the good news is all these people are really smart, so they understand it. But is if you went to go write a newsletter and you're out of the game, you have to go talk to someone. Mm-hmm. You have to go like find opinion. It takes time. Mm-hmm. When you like just dealt with some shit from today, you're like, it's so easy because you're like living it. And so the time you save to create even more, it's not worth it on your ROI of your time. And I think that's the big, and then the other factor is like the best people that I've seen, and I'll use Hiba, who's our HR creator. I mean, she just has a passion for the job. And you can always tell when a content creator has passion. And my other kind of spiel there is like, these people don't want to leave their job. Like they love it too much. They love what they do. And even the attention and the money, it's like, well, it's not that much time. And I love what I do. And I can still make like a lot of money. I'm in. And that's where I think when we think about the success of this group, I don't think anyone has had the focus. It's a different problem to solve than Get Ready With Me creators on TikTok to journalists leaving to go to Substack. Like the mindsets of those creators are very different than the ones that we're going after. And I think there's just, you have to have a certain amount of attention and focus to actually solve for that.
My direct reports at Morning Brew always knew what I was going to start pushing us to do 3 weeks beforehand, because I'd write about it in AMO first. Never through the lens of Morning Brew, but just like, oh, I'm really thinking about this one thing. Let me write that out. Let me think about that. And then 3 weeks later, we'd start talking about it in meetings, and my editor would always go, yeah, I knew this was coming, because I'd write about it.
Well, I mean, and I stopped writing my newsletter externally, but instead I replaced it with an internal newsletter. I write it every single Sunday, and the team is generally, 3-4 weeks ahead of time. I don't write it about, it's not like company announcement stuff. It's like about what it's called top of mind. It's just like what's on my top of mind every Sunday. They know, like normally 3, 4, 5 weeks later, it's like, yep, he wrote about that.
Now I know why we're doing this.
Now we know why we're doing it. And that's great. That's like, I mean, I think that's the influence that you're trying to do in all of content.
So these folks keep their jobs. They create content as well for Workweek. Talk about specifically like the relationship between the creator and Workweek. They're not employees, they're independents?
We have all types, and that's not a sidestep. It's like truly, there's all types. There's our chief people officer writes a newsletter, so she's a W-2 employee. We have 1099. We have LLC. Someone has an LLC through that way of what I don't understand, but you get it. It's all the relationships, and I think there's opportunities to meet people where they're at is, I think, our job with that a little bit. But ultimately, the relationship that we have with any creator is about helping them create create better content and actually start creating content. I think it's not more, it's starting from zero to do one. And I don't really care. Generally, I think as we think about scale and growth, there will probably be more similar relationships where, we're able to provide them the infrastructure and confidence and come over that risk reward and insecurity and trust to like start creating content. And how that shows up in a legal way might vary, but I think that's our job to be able to meet those people where they're at.
So then how does compensation work for a creator? Let's not use the W-2, or maybe not the W-2 because she's obviously got a salary, but like when you bring on a creator, like how does that work from a compensation perspective?
We think about it not that different than, I mean, Substack doesn't say it out loud, but like they do guarantees, right? I mean, everyone knows like on thing. I mean, I think there's like basically ways to do guarantees, rev share, health insurance, something that like we offered early days. Most people don't really like, it's like that's not a draw as much anymore. One thing that is a draw that we've like tried to do, my like fun fact, a lot of people are like, what happens if they get hit by a bus? And of like the 8 creators we worked with, I think we've had 4 or 5 pat or mat leaves like for like 4 months. Didn't miss a beat. And that's an interesting, it was the first time we were like, oh shit. Second time I was like, ugh. And now we kind of have, we have a person leading that content creator team with basically one person. And she helped us through that situation to create a blueprint. But, I think right now the number one thing that I think people want is the confidence to know that someone cares, the ability to convince themselves and typically a family member that the time commitment, which is one of the big things, and the reward is worth it. And how that shows up in pay or whatever, but like that's where I think, like, to be honest, the details of those matter way less than having the empathy of like what you need to meet people what they need to actually do this, and why don't any of these people create content today, like, at all. And it's not because of like, well, I don't want to do a 1099. It's like, that's not why. It's like, go solve the actual thing. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
Is it unlimited upside though for these folks?
Absolutely.
So they can just keep making more and more. And is it directly tied to like their newsletters or to their vertical?
To the content that they're creating, right? Like, yeah. So like, I mean, I say that not to but it's like if they do an event, they can get paid. You know, like it's anything that they're.
What about like if you have a healthcare community that is, you know, part of that vertical, but like you just said, like members make their own content. So if you make money through the community, how does that get split?
We haven't made money in advertising the community, so we'll figure that out.
Figure that out.
Yeah.
So one of the criticisms I had of your business very early on was
the day we launched.
The day you launched, I wrote a critical article about you guys.
And you were right in a lot of ways about that, by the way.
Well, you know,
I still know the exact words because I hold grudges. But
I'm a better operator than you are. You were at, I think you were at like 11 or 12 creators in 2023, maybe even more than that.
Yeah, more.
Right. You had way more creators and
18, I think.
And the criticism I basically said was you have no scale across any of them, which is going to make selling this an absolute monster. Maybe those weren't my exact words. You probably know better than I do because you have a grudge. You now have 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about like that reduction, right? Like talk about why, like what you realized going from, you know, all those to far fewer and like that evolution or that transition.
So,
and what did I exactly say?
I mean, you not as politely said, the sales is going to be a challenge here because they require different customers. And I think it was a good insight. At the time, though, which was to talk about that mindset of switching, we weren't really focused on advertising. It was like advertising can pay the bills, but like this isn't how this business can scale. So I wasn't as concerned about it. And so that's part of the clarity of like what that transition was. Is like in 2023, we realized that we probably, if we had to like absolutely hold ourselves accountable to like what's the one thing we think we could do better than almost anyone else, we thought it was B2B advertising. And you know, Beck and I have done that. Callie, who is our SVP of advertising, all of us are ads people in this game. And
which is why it was always so interesting that you were like, ads are not really that important. Everything else is really what matters. You know, you guys are all B2B ad people.
Yeah, true. And I think this is like growing up and maturing a little bit as a business, but also like, I think the biggest thing in media that happens all the time is following what the news says and like not going off of your own instinct. And like at the time it was like, the athletic, and like, oh, this, and to be fair, there's a lot of good reasons why that criticism happened. That like instead of saying we're not going to do it, is probably let's go like solve for the things that actually were shitty about it. But that was a part of it, but also like I believe this to this day. Part of our announcement this week with the Partner Platform was like a big thing of solving this. Like I thought the trust that we were building and the influence that these creators had far exceeded any amount of advertising revenue that we could make. And like, that was true. There was no way to prove how influential these people were in advertising. So it was like, well, let's go like launch something so much higher ticket that like it shows up that way. And taking a step back, I think that was in 2023. It was like, okay, let's go make the very best B2B advertising platform possible. To do that, okay, what markets? Climate tech does not have an ad market, and so it's like, okay, that's a good, probably one that if you are interested in that, Nick for Keep Cool is like the greatest newsletter. It wasn't about skill set also of that group, right? It was about, hey, there's no ad market, and then the other piece of it was the ability to just like sit down and focus. And we were pretty quiet for like 18 months, 2 years, because it was like, let's go really start building towards the best ads business we could, and we didn't really want to tell anyone about it till we were there.
Last question about creators. You've said that you can't make someone a subject matter expert, but you can make them a voice of authority. Mm-hmm. What is the specific thing you are looking for when it comes to a creator? Like, obviously you want them to know what they're doing, but like, what is the tell that you know that they're going to be able to do this for a while? Like Lenny's been doing it for a while. I've been doing it for a while, but a lot of people kind of fizzle out after. I've always said it's easy to write 10 articles. Good luck writing 100. Yeah. Right. Like what are you looking for?
One, I think we should create a space where if you just want to write 10, that's great. Is I think also part of the problem here is like, it's okay not to build a business, but to like pay for a family vacation or just like get something off your chest. And I think like that's part of what we've learned also here, is like not setting expectations that like you have to write 1,000. And ironically, once you tell that to someone, you can tell the people are like, no, I want to do more. And that passion, that ambition is normally then what allows people to push through when it's not easy. And so that's the passion is like the biggest thing. Something I have like evolved on over time is I always ask the question, hey, I don't know anything about your space. Tell me something that only someone with your experience would know about it. And it's just it's an interview question we ask at Workweek too, but it's the easiest way because if I know it, I'm like, either you're too scared, you're not a good communicator, or you don't know. And none of those things really work well. So that's like a cheat question. But I've also come to believe that like subject matter expert, I think, is a term I've stopped using more recently because one, like the word expert comes with like a lot of preconceived notions and all these things. But like and I've also like now met with so many people from our communities that I'm like, okay, I don't think I would hire you for this role. But like when you talk about this like one thing of your job that you've done, you're like really interesting to hear about that. And that's like a lot of people in the workplace. Like, are they like the world's greatest e-com marketer? Like maybe not, but do they like know this one thing about meta creative ads that's like, holy shit, that's awesome to listen to? And it's like no different than sports commentators today and those things. Like they're not the best at all these things. Like they don't know what they're talking about, but when they talk about that like one thing they know, it's like, wow, I can't like not listen. And so I think when I now kind of like do that is like, it's less about, are you this like broad expert across this whole topic? But if you can like fluently tell me something that's like interesting about even like the most niche thing, it's okay, write about it 10 times. Like it don't have to be 1,000. Become the person that knows that thing. And then you become the voice of authority. And I think the voice of authority comes from consistency and perception and a lot of other things that has sometimes little to do with quality, depending on the situation. But I think subject matter expert, there's way more people that know how to talk about a certain topic in this amazing way that I think never told you should do this because they're not the most broad knowledgeable about the industry or profession.
All right, so let's talk about the business. So advertising is the bread and butter
right.
of the business. Where from an advertising perspective, like where is all the money coming from? Talk to me about the products and all of that. Our primary source of advertising is still in newsletters. 85%, 80%. I mean, like vast majority newsletter advertising. We do our retreats, our larger events. Those are sponsorship driven. We have an event sponsorship team. It's kind of a new initiative that we launched last spring, where we had a guy come from one of the big B2B event companies and has made a huge impact. And so our event business makes 10-15%, and then newsletter advertising is like the vast majority of it as well. At one point, and I don't recall which store it was, you talked a little bit about why your CPMs are so much higher than some of your competitors. There is a trend with you and me. We'll talk and you'll brag a little bit, and then it comes back to bite you when I bring it up in an interview.
This one I feel pretty good about.
All right. So in the 2026 ad market, is that premium holding, and why that premium?
We're up 7% from last year, which last year was up a lot more than that.
So up 7% from revenue. CPM. Why is it continuing to go up?
So we announced it. You covered it. The Partner Platform, which was the issue that we had and the advantage that we had in the market for CPMs first, like when we first launched, like you sent me a funny text message when I said I launched Perpetual and I think I made $15,000 the first month, and you're like, took me like 4 months.
Yeah.
4 months to do that.
But I'm a pure creator. You're a salesperson, so like you probably called up your ESP and said, "Hey, by the way,
exactly. Sail through. Thank you so much."
Yes, sail through. Thank you so much. Who have never actually spent with AMO once in our entire existence.
And so one, the reason why we had great CPMs at first is we knew how to tell the story of the creator better than most people, I think, in the space. And the second is like we actually had uniquely access to creators with scale. Like a lot of what we heard from competitors, like, oh, well, they have a newsletter, and it's like, okay, they send like maybe once every 2 weeks, and you don't know when they're going to send it, and their report is like barely in a Google Sheet document. Like, we're a professional organization. You're going to be able to work with us that way, but you still get access to this like trusted voice. And so, we carried really great CPMs. And I was telling the team, like, recently when we were talking about this announcement around the ad platform, is we've always been able to open most advertising doors because of the creator. And normally those marketers love those creators. Like, they love their personality. They love what they represent. All of it. They love it. But the second deal comes from performance. And like the fifth deal definitely comes from performance. And the gap that we started to see and solve was, how do we start to show performance of newsletter advertising to B2B vendors that have this long sales cycle that's not a form fill or lead gen? And we built a platform to be able to do that. And so now when someone clicks on an ad in our newsletter, we can get that click into their CRM at the account level. And now that brand marketer, content marketer, demand gen marketer, which newsletters attracts all three of those types, which is nice for budget purposes. The reality is all three suffered before because they never could prove it. And now, what happens is that CFO pulls the report come the fall, looks at who's going to get cut, and the channels with the least amount of influence of those deals or activity are gone. And we started to give visibility to that. And I think that helped our CPMs a lot last year in a huge way. Our renewal rate every single quarter for now, we launched in October 24 in beta, and every quarter since, our net retention revenue percentage has gone up, has not had one quarter down. And so that's, I think, a big part of what is driving it. Is we've always had great content. We've always had great creators. We've always believed we influenced it. We just could never show the value that was being captured.
So what's the big change that you're doing with the launch of this partner platform? You've talked about verified clicks. You and I have talked about it, and we wrote a story about it earlier this week. What is the big change that took place?
So I think starting from I've had a couple of people be like, oh, I think I could do this. And I was like, sure, let me tell you the process. So the first process was we created our own rules and algorithm for opens and clicks. So our open rate and click-through rates are way lower than anyone else in the industry because they're real. And it's on GitHub. Jacob promoted it. I really appreciate that. But we truly need regulation of that space. This is my other plug. I believe it. And it would be great. But that hurt us. And I think something that Workweek has always tried to do, and this is core of how Beck and I would always try to build relationships with advertisers, we just told the truth. Yes, we like to sell and we know how to do that, but part of our storytelling is actually just truth telling. And so, we had to educate customers of well, yeah, 8 clicks. That's right. Yeah, that's not wrong. You got 8 clicks. And that was a challenge. This is why incentives matter, and the compounding nature of back to the Disney map is then it was yeah, but those 8 clicks, those are executives at this amazing, they have so much budget control. And it's well, how do we tell that story? And so then we started telling that story with our biggest customers, of course, that we could do manual reporting on and all this stuff. And then it was wait, how do we do this for everyone? And so the partner platform, one, we are using very honest metrics and not inflating anything. And I'll talk about later why that actually helps performance too. But the second piece of this is the who of clicking is basically accountability on both sides. And at first, when we first launched this, only 35% or so were matching. Well, that's a lot better than a form fill, which is 4%. But it's still not we're just 65% of our clicks are gone.
Right.
So we're pretty incentivized, if you're telling the truth, to start to make the right decisions. So we spent a long time building that and building the infrastructure around that. And then, it came back of hey, we built this system to visualize how to see our data because it's really difficult to do. And it was that person doesn't work at that company anymore. It was well, we can't do that. That's going to not be good. And so then it was how do we keep our data fresh. And those are the things that went into this to build that. And now the difference is we can sell advertisers on scale through their actual CRM. So like I just got a Fortune 500 one this week. It was like, hey, how many people in our CRM do you reach in your newsletters? Well, I can like tell you within like 1 second, basically. And then the second aspect of that is once they decide, oh, wow, they reach 44% of our customers. Let's put some money here. Now we are selling actually outcomes. And what I think is fun and what we innovated on is we are still selling trust and context and creators. Like it's still the thing. Mm-hmm. It's just now they get to prove it. So there's this win-win where I think typically in B2B media, outcomes and content were never attached to each other. Typically it was, a little bit, but like fluffy, and trying to attach those together where like great content leads to great outcomes. And now we can show that. And I think, that's where the aspiration is like, can we make the whole industry do this? Cause we'd all be a lot better if we like started to really think from that perspective.
One of the things you said was that, lead gen was never really meant to be about intent. Mm-hmm. It was about making marketers...
Like white paper lead gen.
Yeah, white paper lead gen. It was about making marketers look good to their CFOs by filling a CRM with a whole bunch of, contact information that the sales team was never going to do anything with. I mean, we've all dealt with sure, let's do this white paper download product for you, or even a webinar. Oh, here's a spreadsheet of all people who attended the webinar, and like 3 months later, you have a conversation with a salesperson. They're like, yeah, I haven't talked to anyone on that list. It's like, it just dies. So like, where do you think the industry's been fooling itself? And what has stopped people from like fixing this to begin with?
I mean, I don't want to beat up on our industry because I actually think like there's amazing talented operator. I mean, we were doing this, right? Like, mm-hmm. So like I there's no criticism of the industry in that way where we were like intentionally lying or intentionally selling shitty products. I think like this goes to incentives, but like why does advertising not compound? Like why is SaaS valued so high and advertising valued so low? And like I got that question a lot because we raise money. It's like, and at the core, it was because of predictability. Mm-hmm. Like that's it. And SaaS has this high of net retention revenue, and advertising, most people don't even know what the term is. And the reality is like negative. It's like 60%. And so like year over year, you made $100. The next year, that revenue is probably going to come in at like $60 or $70 tip on like a traditional publisher. Which
means you're chasing a whole new set of advertisers.
Every time.
Yep.
And this is why the industry can't compound advertising. Where SaaS, you give 100, the next year you make 110 because the seat expansion, et cetera. And so I think the issue is that we've had decades and decades of decisions that led to this moment where there was no real incentive to solve the predictability problem, because most of the best publishers are owned by companies that want to sell them in 3 to 5 years. Why would they invest 2 years into a product that mm-hmm. they're going to offload in 3 to 5? And that's not everyone, but that is a lot of the best and most inspiring companies that I look up to, and the operators there, like they're on clocks. And so I think the reason why we had that opportunity is because our source of capital was different. The patience is a little different. But it also just, I think, allowed us to take a step back and say, okay, the metric, if we want to like talk about business, the metric we care about most and what we look at every single Monday in the company across our entire all hands is net retention revenue of how many dollars last year are coming back right now. And if it's below 100, like we got a lot of work to do. And that's why we track that.
Why is a newsletter ad a better form of intent than a white paper or something lead gen like that?
I think there's more nuance to say that that's like always the case. There's like great white paper. We do great white papers. Mm-hmm. I think there's like, can be more nuance to that. What I'm talking about is like content syndication, like blast, that crap. And the reason why newsletter ads are so much better is really why I fell in love and joined The Hustle. Is like, I remember the idea of like Sam and John, the co-founders of The Hustle, ran a couple of ads in the newsletter, and they weren't ads people at all, like knew nothing about it. And I remember seeing that ad. I think it was like Casper mattress. And I was like, this is good. And it was because they wrote it and it was in their voice. But like anyone knows, 15 years ago, that's not how ads worked. And it was give me your banner assets and we'll log it in, right? And like I was like, wow, that is like unique. And they didn't even know, in my opinion, they didn't even know like how amazing and special it was. I think it was like $11,000 of revenue or something that month. Like it was nothing huge. And so, but it just resonated with me. And I now in B2B, it's like, I'm not trying to do clickbait. I hate clickbait. I've always hated clickbait. Told myself I never would run a business that did it. And then the second though is like, can you actually have content forward advertising? And that's what newsletters does that better than anyone. And then when you attach a voice and a personality to that ad, it's even better. And I think that's kind of at the heart of like why it's worked so well for the last 10 years.
Talk about there's a two-parter to this question. Talk about the way you had to retrain the sales team to sell this new way, but then also how you had to train marketers to buy this way, because it's a different way of looking at, especially because everyone else in the industry still does it the old way.
Yeah. So the first one, we have amazing leadership in the company. It's like no ands, if, buts about it. And that's and also longevity. Callie, who's our SVP of advertising, has been with us since September of 2021. Jenna, July. I mean, we've had our leadership team is really, really great on the sales side. But also there's this messaging around like telling the truth. I mean, like, and no one wants to lie. And we won't hire anybody like that. And like I said, I don't think people are intentionally lying, but once you explain it and you're like, ooh, I guess that's not right. Right. And so that, the team, that wasn't like, it was a lot of operational training, and it still is. Like, we're still actively, I just have like a million Slacks from this week of like, we just had this scenario pop up and it's new. We're still learning. But great leadership is definitely the answer, and buy-in of why we're doing it and what we're doing. And then the second one I'd say is a little bit lucky for us, is like, we don't win a lot of first deals because of performance. Like, people aren't coming to us being like, we're not known as like a lead gen house.
Right.
So they're not signing up for us being like, hey, I heard you guys, can I get 1,000 leads for $40 each? Like that's not why people are reaching out. They're reaching out because of our creators.
Right.
And so that's why I have this emphasis on like, it's about the second deal and the third deal and the fourth deal, is if all of a sudden it's like, hey, you get all the things of why you're working with us. But also, guess what? Like, we're going to give you a report that when at the end of the year, when your CFO pulls it, this actually will show up there. You don't have to do a lot of convincing at that point. Like, they came to you already for what they're doing, and they trust the creator. And then the last one, which I think I give ourselves a lot of like credit for, is Callie and I, our SVP of advertising, had a conversation for about 5 minutes. It wasn't very long. It was her and Jenna wrote the memo originally for the initial idea of the partner platform, of like bringing transparency to these clicks. But then it got to the point where it was like, if this doesn't work, we have nowhere to hide.
Oh yeah.
Like, if we suck, we suck.
Oh, you bet it all.
And we just push the chips in. And like I said, that's why 18 months is a long time to test something. Everybody reached out this week, goes, I love it. I think we're going to try that or do that. I'm like, do it. And I think it makes the industry better, but there's no hiding. There's no storytelling, ironically, for a team that knows how to storytell. And
so the only way this works, really, you talked about publishers having 35-40% of data.
Yeah. And then it decays.
The only really way that this works is if you can get to true mass scale of users, of known users, right? Users who you have data on, who they are, where they work, their industry. They fit a taxonomy that you've built for each of your verticals. I think you said something to the extent of that you can resolve more than 80% of your subscribers to a named person at a company. Mm-hmm. How are you keeping that data fresh? What is it about you guys that is different than everybody else?
So multiple things that go into that. Could probably do a whole podcast just on this. But one, there's been an emphasis of data and data engineering from almost day one in the company. And so this is not something, I think sometimes there's this and as someone who's made this mistake before, there's an incompetence or a lack of culture around a product that then you're like, well, we have to do this. And everyone's like, no one knows what you're talking about, and no one wants to do this. From day one, essentially, I mean, very early in 2022, we've had a senior leader in data in the company. And so it's something we've always understood. And again, telling the truth, like the decay thing was not anything. I mean, I never thought about that until like all of a sudden it was like, hey, do we say this person is this? Even though like if you look on LinkedIn, they don't work there anymore. I'm like, no. So, part of this is just experience over time and creating the opportunity then to re-engage them. And so there's a couple ways. I'll give you like some concrete examples. One is the event registration platform. So like that was without a doubt a pretty big initiative. It was a big event. Platforms are really hard to build. And we still lack on a lot of features relatively because we're using our own. But at these conferences now, and now other people are really kind of getting it out there, people are starting to use that platform for free. It's just a nice way to keep that fresh. Like last week we had somebody do an HR webinar about AI. It wasn't us. It wasn't sponsored. It was like 1,400 HR people that showed up. Well, that's like a new opportunity to understand that. So, and then the difference here is also like, we're not talking about like mass sums of people. Like if I was trying to like update tens of millions of records, like I actually have no idea how we'd approach that. When we're talking about like, hey, we basically every year need to find multiple touch points for a couple 100,000 people, it's a lot different. And then if you take a different step back on the company record, we have even less than that, right? And so that's that's really around the updating is finding these touch points. Events is one of them that's really successful. And then the other one is we have a form filled product that we sell with advertisers that uses our own form and stuff. And that works where we basically create our own lead gen form for them. But that's updated fresh data as well. And so there's different ways, but the key is having engagement with that user over time where they want to put it in, which and it's a lot easier to do that if you can control the stack yourself.
So I have to imagine that the communities and the word community is sort of a weird word in and of itself.
Right.
But from my understanding, there are literally digital communities that folks participate in. Is that a fair way you would describe that?
We have a feed.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of resources being put into the feed. It was built and we've not updated with an algorithm or it's like chronological based. It's very simple. And then there's DMs, which are very actively used. But that's the like community aspect. I think the opportunity is for us to do more around that. And one of the things that I think we've done well is focus, and we focused on our advertising platform for the last 2 years post the community launch. And now I think the next phase of Workweek is how do we reach more leaders in business in our current verticals and exploring other ones that would be interesting from that perspective and building that out. And so there's the community of the feed of like, I think when people say there's like, oh, is it Slack? It's like, there's not like channels necessarily, right? It's a little bit different. But it's mostly around identity of like, oh, I'm part of this. And so if you like search safe space on LinkedIn, there's a ton of people that are like, oh, I'm part of this. And they talk about it. And I think the messaging and why we branded it, this is a Disney poll for sure, is like is the reason why we didn't make this like Workweek named is like naming the HR community safe space and naming those things that speak to that user creates this identity and trust and long term I think allows us to allow users to create like more content and share more insights.
So how many active members do you have in your communities?
So we talk about it on a verified basis. So the verified, because we have subscribers that we don't have identity on, which is small, like 20%. And then we have users that we do know who they are, but they're restricted. So like one of our communities has a 16% acceptance rate. Our best one is like 48. So it's not everyone gets in. So
what are they getting accepted to? Is that the feed?
Into the platform, into the community platform itself. And then there's events that are for community members only. If you're a member, you can throw your own event. If you're not a member, you can't throw an event. So yeah, there's like access to those different things in there. We also have like a mini, which weirdly gets used a lot, like a mini out of the box white label like AI tool, but it searches the whole community for people to like ask questions of like, hey, what did this person say, and things like that. So you get access to that as a free member. So verified users though, we're well north of 200,000 active a month, and our weekly active to monthly active ratio, which is how we really determine, it's the metric we look at internally. The reason for that, kind of to the point around identity, is like the more that we can get them to engage on a weekly basis, the more likely we are to be able to keep that data updated. And it's not a daily product. Like, I don't expect people to log in Saturday and Sunday. We have huge drop-offs on those days, and so
surprising the name of the company.
You know, Workweek is the name. Though some of us may have work weeks that go into Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, that's how we think about it. And our weekly active, monthly actives is like 79% right now.
So what is active? Like if I was, let's say I was part of the healthcare community because I worked in healthcare, you've let me in, wonderful. How do I come up and get flagged as active versus inactive?
So if we have any identity of you, like in a logged in space, essentially, you're counted. So it's easier to say what's not. What's not is if you just go to our website like we don't count website traffic in that. We don't count anything that like we don't know who you are. You're not included in that. It's not, which is, it's not also we don't count anything where in-person events, because like we have them, but like that's not. So event registration, webinars, if you're that counts, right? Those types of things. And so that's a big driver of that engagement is that event platform. But anything that I know who you are when you're in a logged in state.
So I sign up for the newsletter, right? The healthcare newsletter. I join your community. You know that I'm Jacob. I'm the founder of Jacob Hospital Systems. Like, I am exactly your target person. If I open the newsletter, am I active?
If you open the newsletter signed up through the community, correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not if you've gathered. So if I'm not part of the community, you don't classify me as active, even though you might know who I am in the newsletter.
Sorry, say that question again.
If I sign up to the newsletter, you know who I am, but I'm not in the community.
Yeah, you have to finish through, right? Because we don't know who you are until you finish your application.
Well, no, because you said you have like white papers and things like that you've captured data from.
Well, not if they're just signing up for the newsletter. Like, you know what I mean? So maybe that's like a tiny percent of people, but like vast majority of people, we resolve. I mean, when I say like 99% of people resolve from the application.
And so every activity that takes place within a Workweek community, whether attending a webinar, attending an event, all that, anything
that we've built and owned that we like know who you are in the site logged in state.
So the user has to log in first.
Exactly. Like if we don't know, if you're just like, you know, so and that's what you'll see and hear from us, you know, in the coming months is more opportunities to increase that activity and the surface area for those things. Events was a really good win, as I've talked about, but there's other things that we can do to increase the surface area of creating more activity engagement. But we today that's how we've considered it.
And so when I log in and then I decide I want to attend one of your webinars, even though you know who I am,
you don't even have to log in necessarily, but yeah, go ahead.
But so you know who I am, right? I'm in a logged in state to attend the webinar, but I have to sort of refill in a form so that you get your updated fresh data. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's why I said you don't even necessarily have to log in, because the thing that we want to solve, and we actually think this is better for users, and the thing that we've worked very hard on, is the way you get to 80% is not by just collecting work emails. That's like, that's not, it's resolving personal emails to a company. And if you look at LiveRamp and almost every other identity graph company, they struggle with that a lot. Like they don't know how to do it. well. They have to buy their way to do it. And so that's, we do not necessarily force you on like a one-click registration. Like if you're logged out, like, and you just want to put in your personal email, it's our job later to resolve that. And that's what our data engineering team can do. And that's like when I talk about investing in those resources, that's the infrastructure to be able to build that identity graph to resolve that personal email to that work email to that company.
So you've talked a lot about events actually being a pretty big driver of data. I understand that community members kind of host their own events, and those could be really kind of anything that they want to do. But what are the Workweek events? Like, what are the ones you put on?
Yeah, we have 3 types. So we have 3 types of events. So yeah, we have member-led is what we call it, where if you're at HR Transform or Money 2020, you can throw a happy hour and have people show up. We started having vendors sneakily use that, which is something fun to later figure out how to solve for. The second type of event we do are essentially like sponsored, our Workweek sponsored community events. So we do Money 2020, we do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It's a community event. It has like no content. It's supposed to be fun. It's not sponsored. We put on a big production for it, but it's not meant to like be this like huge like content. It's just a fun thing. So we do a lot of those around the country, normally as a kind of sidecar to the major shows. And we also do some dinners and relatively other like things like that. And then the third type of event are our retreats. So these are where we invite it's invitation only. We invite our top, for healthcare, it's 100 people this year. HR is 200. We invite our top 100 to 200 people in the community. They get 2.5 days on site at some experience, and we pay for their flight, we pay for their hotel, and there's very little content, like less than probably 2 hours of like content in that 2.5 days. And then the way that we monetize that is with sponsors can sponsor that event. And then they also have an executive that they can have come and meet with these other executives. And Becca, my co-founders, running those, they're amazing experiences. The healthcare one we're doing this year, it's everything that you would imagine people who run health systems and hospitals would want to do for 2.5 days. And then our HR one is everything you would imagine HR people want to do. It's very much speaking to the community. And it's a little bit of a blend of like, I sometimes describe it as like Dreamforce to Salesforce. Like it's a little bit of marketing for our communities to bring them together and have that moment. But also simultaneously, it's a great way to get our sponsors and their executive teams in the room with us as well, and have them actually have those relationships built. So that's old world might have called that like a hosted buyer event of some sort, but we do it a little bit differently by not just like being like, here's your free hotel. We try to make it kind of a red carpet experience that they really want to do.
Are you mandating meetings?
So when you sign up, there's 15 meeting slots that you can choose to schedule. You do not have to sign up. This is kind of Matt Middleton taught us this playbook a little bit, who you've had speak at AMO. We actually heard this and created this strategy from the AMO Summit. That's not a sponsor plug.
You still haven't bought your ticket yet.
That's a real thing. We literally left that thing. Becca and I sat with Matt in the hallway and we were like, we're going to go do this. And so we give them the option. They're not dumb people. They know that like it would be nice to have that. It also matters for sponsor diversity, like getting enough vendors there where it's actually interesting and like the right people there. So we technically do not force it, but everyone's going to take probably between 3 and 5 meetings if I had a guess of those 15 slots.
I suspect there is something in the back of their minds going, I got invited to this free thing. Are they going to look to see how many meetings I took and maybe not invite me next year?
Yes, I think that's probably a fair assumption that they would think.
So is there any delegate revenue or attendee revenue for these events, or is it purely sponsorship?
No ticket revenue.
Is that something you want at some point, or you don't really care about that?
I don't. I think it does 2 things. One, the same reason that we learned with communities. I think when you charge for a ticket, you naturally have a constraint towards the quality supply. Mm-hmm. And I believe the quality supply and the access and the trust that we have with that quality far exceeds the value. So I'd rather do it that way. It also, because of being this community of building kind of like that reputation and that trust around there, not having people feel like they're constantly being sold to is an important thing.
Yeah.
And so we don't do it. I think if we did do it, we'd probably make a lot of money and it's attractive. We get it. Just long term, I think it's the better solution.
So then it's pretty safe to say that if we look at the pie chart of your revenue, I think you said earlier, it's like 85% in the newsletter.
Yeah.
15% events, and it's really just event sponsorship.
Yeah.
Is there
we have a little bit of that subscription, but like it's nothing that we try to even like grow.
Right. So like a percent, something like that. All right. So 85% ads in the newsletter, 15% in the events. What are you projecting for revenue this year?
We are going to do, we're out of the teens this year, so we feel good about that. And
I think you've been out of the teens for a little while, though.
Yeah, we feel good about that. I don't know what I told you last, so I'm being careful with what I say. I'm not going to say the exact number, but I think the bigger opportunity for us is really around what's holding our revenue back is we need more inventory in the most blunt supply demand way possible. We're having huge success with the partner platform. Our fill rates are as high as you can possibly basically get. Our CPMs are up. We're doing all the things to pull the levers to make more money. I was really, really hesitant to go wider on new communities or really even think about doing anything differently until we felt like we absolutely had to. And I think now we're getting to that point where in 2027 we will start to explore how we can grow faster by doing more.
Okay, but if we go back to something you said at the beginning of the show, one of the benefits of being a creator in your thing is you don't have to like create more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
But you're out of inventory, which means you need your creators to create more.
Like, if this is the difference, I think is also is like if you were in my seat at Morning Brew, you would just add another send. I'm positive. You'd just be like,
absolutely
cool, we're going to do another send. That is not because the reader wants that. That's not because it's good for the creator even necessarily. It's just for revenue.
Which is the same problem you're running into, though.
Yes, I agree. I think long term, caring about those first two matters a lot. So if I have a technically, if I can't grow as fast as I want to because that's the problem I have, but I'm not compromising what I believe is the right thing for the readers and for the creators, I know we're going to be able to solve that. And so, but it's not by saying creator, we're going to do 5 sends now, gear up. I personally still don't think anybody wants to read about their job from the same person 5 times a week.
And the reason the AMO newsletter is still only twice a week.
Yes. And so that's I think there's like, and Beck and I talked about it from day one, but that's the constraint that we're in as a growth phase, which is great. We feel really good about that.
But how do you get out of it though? So if you're not going to increase your sends, you're primarily a newsletter business. How do you get out of that limitation where you're out of inventory?
Yeah. I mean, there's 3 levers hypothetically. There's more users.
Okay.
So we're at, I now use our CRM matching as kind of an understanding of how we've penetrated the market. And I think we're like 40 to 50% on our markets penetrated. So we have some more room to go there. The next is more communities. We go wider. I love the CFO community. Our CFO would make the best creator. So I like going wider as an opportunity potentially there. And then the last one is more surface area of inventory, whether looking at the community as opportunities to do that, or more creators within those communities creating newsletters as well. So those are all the levers that are the solutions to that. And I think like the future is probably a combination of all those things.
Have you explored buying any other creator businesses to bring into the portfolio to kind of give you more inventory?
Mm-mm. Well, I mean, we've acquired like lists from a bunch of people through the years, and we don't make a big deal about it. But I mean, like everyone knows behind the scenes. Last year and early this year, there was a lot of people who started newsletters that weren't having success and were ready to exit those, and we definitely took advantage of that and were able to fold some people into our newsletters. But that's not necessarily a lever that I would say that's in the moment. If it's there, I'm all for it. And we can, the advantage also, by the way, of that is I can take their newsletter and run it through our verification and understand what's the quality of the list. So like we did an acquisition of a healthcare newsletter. They had over 100,000 people on the newsletter. We ran the verification as like 14,000 people that like actually mattered. So there's, we have a unique advantage there, but that's not really the game that I think is like going to like propel us forward. It's like a nice thing if the opportunity is there. We think we're probably a really good buyer compared to most people. So if you have a newsletter you like to offload and stop writing, but it's not necessarily the thing that I think is going to propel us to the growth that we want.
What about a creator who doesn't want to stop writing, wants to keep doing their thing, they just don't want to think about the business anymore?
Call me.
So that's an opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's always been an opportunity. I'd say we were truly, I mean, this is not bullshit. We thought finding this type of creator, because it was new, would take us a while. And I mean, the reason why we added so many in 2022 is, I mean, I probably rejected 99.5% of people that reached out. And we were reaching out to by thousands of people to want to create content with us. I think it's our job to like be able to do that successfully. What I promised myself after that time period is like I would not say yes until I knew with a very high degree of certainty that they would be set up for success.
So north or south of 25 million for 2026.
Yeah, I love that you try.
What's next over the next 3 years?
I mean, solving that problem is one big one. I think I really think about two things. As essentially a marketplace business, I think is how you have to think about this, is like, how do we have the best content and the right users on that side, and attracting creators and setting them up for success is something I think we need to do. Understanding the community expansion opportunities and new verticals that we could get into, we'll definitely be pursuing that. And then the other side is like B2B advertising. I've always loved advertising, you know that, and I've just never been more excited about it. When you take a step back and like look at what's happening, there was this, in Shopify commoditized these D2C stores, and everybody started having them. And then the only way that people could really grow was just spend money on ads. And the winner of that was Meta. Mm-hmm. And I think the next generation of AI is democratizing SaaS. More startups are trying to create more competition, and I don't think enterprise SaaS is going to get disrupted by AI at all.
I don't either.
But there are more competitions coming up that are trying to compete and kind of nip at the heels of incumbents. We are going to see a huge, huge surge of B2B advertising because we're entering this new commoditization period with way more competition. And if you are at the center of that with the most trusted content, with the best ad reporting, I think it's just the perfect time. And so next 3 years, I'm really, really excited just to like lean into that and solve those problems and keep going.
Is Workweek profitable?
We are not profitable right now. We hit our Q2 board. It's first week of June. We hit our Q2 board goals. So, we raised venture capital. We feel good about where we're allocating our capital and how we're doing that. But part of that is, the defensibility. I had a really great creator text me who runs like a pretty decent business on his own, and was like, hey man, I think I'm going to build the partner platform for my own vertical. And I was like, good luck. Not cheap things that we've invested in, but I think long-term, and not just 3, but 5 plus 10 plus years, it gives us a huge advantage in the space.
So you are venture backed. Last time you raised was in 2024, right?
Yeah, correct.
So that's 2 years ago. Typical runway is 24 to 36 months for a venture round, which means you're not profitable.
We're a little bit different, but yeah, I think that we advertising lends itself to I think that's a SaaS metric. Okay. Where we feel pretty good about where we're at with runway and cash and all those things.
Is there a point in which you have to get profitable, or do you go back to investors?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think like I tell the team this, and like, we have a shitty business at a certain scale if we're not printing money. It is very okay, in my opinion, in the business that we're in, to invest in essentially CapEx to allow ourselves an opportunity to win in a much bigger way. And that's how we're approaching it. And I think the opportunity is like not just how does Workweek win, but I think that's why I'm kind of focused on what other opportunities in this category can we help with that we've been able to invest in and do that others potentially, just due to the resources they have, could not do.
Because you're venture backed and you're probably in the first half of a typical venture hold period, you don't really have to think about the sale at any point. Is there anything in your mind as you build where you think Workweek can go from like a true size perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the first memo we wrote, which I reference a lot, we talked about a number. We wrote it in there that I believed that we could become one of the biggest kind of digitally native first media companies of all time, and that would be New York Times at like $7 billion. I wrote $10 billion in the memo, and safe to say I didn't exactly know the plan there. As I like take a step back and I look at, I think, what the impact we can have for B2B advertising, and I look at the problems we're solving with this new class of creators that no one really is paying attention to in this like really in-depth specific way, the trust that is building off of that. There's a lot of market to create a huge business like that. And I think there's ads businesses at Apple. I pay attention to public markets all the time. And there's an ad tech company called AppLovin, and they just completely focus on mobile advertising. And they had their own gaming studio and their margins are 80+% today. I mean, it's an amazing business. And I look at models like that of like at scale, this isn't just about top line revenue and growth, and all those things matter because they indicate the velocity of the company. But I think it's also trying to find Doximity at really high margins. AppLovin, those are the companies that inspire me, that I like to like take little things from each time.
So, what are the biggest risks to Workweek, and how are you mitigating them?
I mean, if you think about the total size of some of the job loss of AI, it's a real thing.
That is a real one.
I think we're focused. I mean, this is still a risk, but the risk is losing this focus. We're focused on leadership. And like, if you had, I'm just going to pick on HR because they just get cut all the time. But like, if you had an HR team of 10 and now you have one of 4, well, like realistically, they did not cut the head of HR. They cut a lot of the people at the entry level position. And that's really, I think, marketing and all these positions, analysts at healthcare systems. Like, if we were focusing on the right group of people, we're not impacted, but it's easy to not do that. It's easy to just write content. The people that tend to give you the most feedback are like middle-ish management and less. So sometimes it's easy to be rewarded by that feedback and write for the wrong group of people. And if we do that, I think we'll shrink our addressable market for some of our communities. B2B SaaS, I think you could make a case that there's risk there. Some people really believe that. I don't. I think the way that we mitigate that is by showing performance. And I think advertising at its core is never scalable unless you're a performance-driven advertising company. And we have to like be able to become that and be known for that. And so that's a risk. And then I think lastly is the channel of newsletters. I wrote the article last year. Someone just called me anti-newsletters. I was like, dude, it's bold.
That's a statement.
That's a rebrand for me.
Put that on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know. But I do think they're at risk. We make a lot of money from them. That was a big reason why we also started building a community, was to start to have our own path of communication there. And we'll continue to invest in ways to do that and new services. But the newsletter inbox being such a dependency is a risk, I think, for a lot of people, including us.
All right. In those last few minutes, I want to close with the same 2 questions I ask everyone who comes on the show. First, for media operators trying to figure out where to place their bets right now, what's the one thing you would tell them to focus on?
Asking your customer what gets them promoted. It makes you have to force who is your customer. And also you learn not about what you feel comfortable selling, but what makes them successful. And I think there's too many assumptions in this category about what success is. And I think we did a lot of conversations with our customers, and it's amazing what you learn in this like ever-changing era of all these new tools and everything of like, hey, this is what would make me successful and get promoted. It's like, well, that's what we're going to do. And so that's, I'd start there.
My second question is, in your life, it can be professional or personal.
I listen to your podcast. I know these questions.
What is something that you're absolutely obsessed with right now?
So good. I'll give a professional one. I've been like really, really obsessed with AppLovin. I just mentioned them, but it's been a while. But go read and study how they've built that business, and it is like the greatest ads business. It's just amazing, and I love it. And I love how everyone wins. They have no unhappy customers, and they have 82% EBITDA margin. I'm obsessed with like learning about them, and always learning about kind of new business like that. And then personally, we are knee deep in teaching my 4-year-old how to swim. And I was a swimmer. My wife was actually a really good swimmer. And so if you've, for anyone that's ever gone through that, it's like horrifying and terrifying and also like the best feeling in the world. But Austin's pretty hot. So we're at the pool 3, 4, 5 days a week right now and taking up a lot of my time.
Is it really just throw them in and see what happens?
That's kind of how I treated her. Yeah, she's got a big picture of me just throwing her in the pool at like 1.5 years old, but next to her bed. And, we'll go get her. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, thanks for coming on the show.